The night I took the graveyard shift at the old Callister building, I told myself that fear was just a habit of the mind, something learned and therefore something that could be unlearned. I had said it out loud while standing in the lobby during my interview, smiling too hard at the property manager as the fluorescent lights flickered above us. The building was a 40-year-old corporate tower that no one wanted anymore, half abandoned, waiting for a developer who never came. Most floors were empty. A few startups rented cheap offices during the day, but at night the place belonged to silence, dust, and whoever was desperate enough to watch over it. That someone, apparently, was me. I needed the job. That truth outweighed every rumor I'd heard. People said the night guards never lasted. People said the cameras malfunctioned. People said there were sounds in the stairwells that didn't belong to animals or plumbing. The property manager dismissed it all with a tired laugh, the kind that came from repeating the same lie too many times. He slid the contract across the desk and told me my duties were simple. Monitor the cameras, make hourly patrols, log anything unusual, and call maintenance if something broke. He didn't look me in the eyes when he said unusual. My first night began at 11. The city outside was loud with traffic and life, but inside the building everything felt muted, as if the walls swallowed sound. The lobby smelled faintly of old carpet and industrial cleaner. My footsteps echoed even though I tried to walk softly. At the security desk, I found the logbook, a ring of keys heavy enough to pull my belt down, and a bank of monitors showing grainy black and white feeds from cameras placed throughout the building. I noticed immediately that several screens were filled with static. Others showed empty hallways stretching away into darkness, lit by emergency lights that cast long, distorted shadows. One camera, labeled Stairwell C, flickered every few seconds, the image warping as if something passed too close to the lens. I leaned in, squinting, but saw nothing unusual. I wrote a note in the logbook and told myself that old buildings had old wiring. Midnight arrived quietly. The city noise faded as if someone had turned a dial, leaving only the hum of electricity and the occasional groan of the building settling. I made my first patrol, riding the elevator up to the 10th floor and walking down the central hallway. The offices were dark, their glass walls reflecting my flashlight beam back at me. My reflection followed me everywhere, warped and doubled, a reminder that I was alone but never really felt like it. On the 7th floor, I heard a sound that made me stop. It was faint, almost lost beneath the hum of the lights, but it was rhythmic, like footsteps moving slowly somewhere ahead of me. I froze, listening. The sound stopped. I waited for a long moment, my heart pounding loud enough that I was sure it would give me away if someone was really there. Finally, I laughed under my breath, a thin, nervous sound, and continued on. The logbook entry later described it as building noise. Back at the desk, I watched the monitors. Time stretched. My phone lost signal somewhere around 1 in the morning, the screen stuck searching for a network that never came. I told myself it was the thick walls. When I glanced up again, I noticed movement on one of the screens. Camera 12, 3rd floor east corridor. A shadow slid across the floor, elongated and thin, as if cast by something tall moving just out of frame. I leaned closer. The shadow didn't behave like a normal one. It bent at strange angles, its edges rippling as though it were underwater. Then it slid backward, retreating the way shadows aren't supposed to. My mouth went dry. I watched for several minutes, but nothing else happened. When I finally forced myself to look away, my reflection in the darkened monitor looked pale and strained, eyes too bright. At 2, I made another patrol. This time, the elevator refused to stop on the 3rd floor. The button lit up, then went dark as the doors slid shut again, carrying me past. I swore quietly and rode up to 4, then took the stairs down. Stairwell C smelled of rust and damp concrete. The walls were stained with old water marks that looked disturbingly like handprints. As I descended, the lights flickered, plunging me into darkness for a heartbeat at a time. Halfway down, I heard breathing. It was close, too close, a wet, uneven sound that made my skin crawl. I spun around, flashlight sweeping the narrow space, but the stairwell was empty. The breathing continued for another second, then stopped abruptly, leaving a ringing silence behind. I stood there, shaking until my legs forced me to move again. When I reached the third floor, I didn't linger. I walked the corridor quickly, checking doors, telling myself that fear was just exhaustion wearing a mask. By 3, I had a headache that throbbed behind my eyes. The monitors seemed brighter, the static louder. Camera 12 was black now, the feed completely dead. Another camera showed something I couldn't explain. In the lobby where I sat, there was a second figure behind the desk. It was hunched, its head tilted at an unnatural angle, its face turned toward me. I stared at the screen, my breath caught in my throat, then slowly turned around. There was nothing there. The desk was empty behind me, the lobby stretching out in neat, silent lines. When I looked back at the monitor, the second figure was gone. I sat down heavily, my chair creaking too loud in the quiet. I wrote in the logbook with a shaking hand, my words cramped and uneven. Visual anomaly, possible camera malfunction. Even as I wrote it, I knew how it sounded. I tried to distract myself by reading through old logbooks. The entries grew stranger the further back I went. Guards noted sounds with no source, doors opening and closing on their own. Figures glimpsed in reflections. One name appeared over and over, scribbled in the margins, sometimes crossed out, sometimes underlined. Elias. There was no explanation, no context, just the name, repeated as if writing it might keep something at bay. 4. The building changed. That was the only way I could describe it. The air grew heavier, pressing down on my chest, making each breath feel like work. The lights dimmed slightly, casting deeper shadows. On multiple monitors, doors began to open by themselves, swinging inward with slow, deliberate movements. I watched, frozen, as one by one the radio on the desk crackled to life. I jumped, heart slamming against my ribs. At first, there was only static, then a voice pushed through, distorted and distant, spoke my name. Hearing it from that speaker, in that voice, was worse than any shadow or figure. I grabbed the radio, shouting back, asking who it was, demanding an answer. The voice laughed softly, a sound like air moving through a broken instrument, and then it said, "You're early." The monitors went dark all at once. The lights in the lobby flickered, then died, plunging me into darkness. The emergency lights didn't come on. I was left with only the pale circle of my flashlight, my breath loud in my ears. From somewhere deep within the building, a sound rose, a low, resonant hum that vibrated through the floor and into my bones. It felt like the building itself was waking up. I don't remember deciding to move, but suddenly I was on my feet, keys clutched in my fist, running toward the exit. The doors didn't open. I slammed my shoulder against them, panic breaking through at last, but they didn't budge. Behind me, footsteps echoed, slow and deliberate, no longer trying to hide. I turned, my flashlight beam shaking as it cut through the dark. A figure stood at the far end of the lobby. It was tall, too tall, its limbs stretched thin like shadows pulled too far. Its face was wrong, features blurred and shifting, as if it couldn't decide what it was supposed to look like. When it spoke, its mouth didn't move, but the words filled the space anyway. "You watch the building," it said. "Now the building watches you." The floor beneath me seemed to soften, sinking slightly under my feet. I stumbled, catching myself on the desk. The logbook slid off, pages fluttering like frightened birds. The name Elias was written on nearly every page now, ink bleeding through, letters crawling as if alive. The figure took a step closer, and another, its movements smooth and inevitable. I screamed. The sound echoed, twisted,